At 2:17 a.m., the hospital sounded like it was holding its breath. Not silent, never silent, but restrained. The fluorescent lights hummed softly above the surgical wing. Monitors pulsed in steady rhythms. Rubber saws whispered across polished floors. The air carried antiseptic, cooled metal, and fatigue. Night shift always felt thinner than the day, as if the building itself exhaled once administrators left. At the far end of Corridor C, a nurse stood beside a workstation on wheels, reviewing a chart. No one noticed her at first. Two residents argued quietly near the medication cabinet about lab values. A janitor eased a mop along the baseboard. A patient muttered in sleep behind a curtain. The ordinary sounds layered together, forming the fragile illusion of control hospitals depend on. The nurse did not interrupt it. Her posture was neutral. Shoulders relaxed. Expression unreadable. Her badge hung straight, not swinging, not twisted. She turned a page with careful fingers and scanned it once, eyes moving left to right with mechanical precision. A passing intern slowed beside her. Room 12's pressure dropped again, he said, distracted, already half turned away. She nodded once. How long? He blinked. Sorry? How long since the drop? Oh. 10 minutes, maybe. He shrugged. It happens. She held his gaze a second longer than he expected. Not challenging. Measuring. Recheck manually, she said. Machines drift. He gave a polite smile people use when humoring someone cautious. Sure. He did not recheck. She watched him walk off. Said nothing. Instead, she reached to the side of the cart and adjusted the angle of the portable monitor display by a few degrees. The change was so slight it looked accidental. From her new position, she could now see reflections from the glass doors at the end of the hall. Not that anyone noticed that either. Footsteps approached, two surgeons returning from a consult. Their voices carried the dry fatigue of men who had spoken too long in bright rooms. Telling you, the scans were inconclusive. They're always inconclusive at night. They stopped near the workstation. One of them, gray-haired, glanced at her badge without reading it. Vitals logged? Yes. He nodded once, already looking past her. Good. They continued down the corridor, conversation resuming mid-sentence, as if she had been part of the furniture. She returned to the chart. A metal tray clattered somewhere distant. Not loud. Just wrong. The kind of sound that did not belong to a resting building. Her eyes lifted. No one else reacted. The janitor kept mopping. The residents kept debating. A monitor chimed softly in another room. The sound dissolved into the background. She did not dismiss it. Her gaze shifted, not toward the noise, but toward the intersections of hallway lines. Corners. Door frames. Reflections in glass. She watched the geometry of the space the way some people watch television. A nurse from pediatrics hurried past pushing an empty wheelchair. One wheel squeaked with each rotation. The woman gave a quick nod. Quiet tonight, she said. Yes, the nurse at the workstation replied. The pediatric nurse smiled faintly. Enjoy it while it lasts. She continued down the hall. The squeak faded. The nurse at the workstation looked back to her chart. Finished the line she was reading. Closed the file. Her movements were economical. No wasted motion. No hurry. She slid the chart into its slot, aligned its edge with the others, then rested her hands lightly on the cart's surface. Not leaning. Not idle. Waiting. Across the corridor, room 9's door stood slightly ajar. It had been closed 3 minutes earlier. No one else registered the difference. A resident laughed softly at something on his phone. The janitor wrung out his mop. A ventilator sighed in steady mechanical rhythm. The nurse's eyes remained on the door. She did not approach it. Instead, she reached for a pen and clicked it once. The sound was small, contained, deliberate. She wrote a brief note on a scrap of paper, tore it cleanly, and set it beside the keyboard. Then she shifted the workstation 2 inches to the left. Not enough for anyone to question. Enough to widen her view down the hall. Her breathing stayed slow. Her face stayed neutral. From a distance, she looked like a woman finishing paperwork at the end of a long shift. Up close, the stillness was different. It was not fatigue. It was control. At the nurse's station behind her, someone whispered, "She barely talks, does she?" Another voice replied, "Night staff. They're all like that." A soft chuckle followed. The nurse did not react. If she heard, she gave no sign. Her attention stayed on the corridor. On the door. On the reflections. Seconds passed. Then. Far away. A sound that did not belong in a hospital night. A door opening too fast. Not slammed. Forced. Her eyes shifted once. And stilled. The sound did not repeat. That was what made it matter. Hospitals are full of noise, rolling carts, dropped instruments, doors closing too hard, voices raised too suddenly. Most sounds explain themselves within seconds. This one didn't. The nurse kept her gaze on the corridor's far intersection. Nothing moved. A resident stepped out of room 11 tying his mask behind his head. He glanced both ways, saw nothing unusual, and walked toward the break room. His shoes tapped lightly, unhurried. Normal. She shifted her weight slightly. Not toward the sound. Toward the reflection of the sound's direction. The glass panel at the end of the hallway showed a narrow slice of the adjoining corridor. In it, a shadow crossed briefly, too fast for someone strolling, too controlled for someone lost. Gone. She did not follow. Instead, she reached for the phone on the workstation and pressed a single button. She waited. No answer. She hung up. Behind her, the residents' conversation turned to weekend plans. One of them laughed loudly, the sound echoing off tile. The janitor's mop bucket wheels squeaked as he turned the corner and disappeared. Routine continued, uninterrupted. Her eyes moved once to the ceiling. The security camera above the junction pointed slightly off-center, 5 degrees at most. Enough to miss part of the cross corridor. Enough to matter. Someone had bumped it. Or moved it. She picked up a patient chart and began flipping through it slowly, as if reviewing medication history. While she did, she stepped away from the workstation and walked toward room 9. Her pace was unremarkable. Inside the room, an elderly patient slept under thin blankets. Oxygen tubing rested beneath his nose. The monitor beside him traced calm, predictable waves. She checked his wrist. Pulse steady. Her hand lingered half a second longer than necessary, not feeling the patient's pulse, but listening past it. No footsteps outside. No voices. She adjusted the blanket at the man's shoulder. Smoothed it once. Then she stepped back into the hallway. A supply cart stood against the wall 10 feet away. It had not been there earlier. She looked at its wheels. Locked. Someone had placed it deliberately. Her gaze lifted, not at the cart, but at the blind spot it created in the corridor's sightline. Anyone standing behind it would be invisible from the nurse's station. She nudged the cart with her foot as she passed. Just enough to unlock one wheel. The cart shifted slightly, no sound beyond a soft rubber roll. Now it angled outward, no longer a clean visual barrier. She continued walking. At the intersection, she stopped, not in the center, but one step before it, where her shadow would not reach the adjoining hall. She listened. Air vents. Distant elevator chime. A page announcement muffled by walls. And beneath it. Breathing. Not close. But present. She lowered her eyes, as if checking something in her hand. Her voice, when she spoke, was quiet. Security? No reply. She hadn't expected one. The call button she'd pressed earlier connected to a desk down the hall. Someone should have answered. Someone always did. She turned slightly, enough to glance down the side corridor without exposing her full silhouette. Empty. But the floor told a different story. A faint line marked the polished tile, thin, curved, recent. Not dirt. Rubber. A shoe sole turning under weight. Facing toward the surgical wing. Toward her. Footsteps approached from behind. One of the residents again, holding a coffee. "You okay?" he asked. "You look like you heard a ghost." She shook her head lightly. "Just thought I heard something." He smiled. "At this hour? It's always something." He walked past her into the side corridor, unconcerned, sipping. She watched his reflection in the glass panel as he disappeared from view. 3 seconds passed. 4. 5. The resident's reflection stopped. The coffee cup lowered slightly. He didn't move. The nurse's eyes sharpened. From around the corner, still unseen, came a voice. Low. Male. Not loud. "Don't." The word carried no strain. No panic. Just instruction. The resident's reflection stiffened. The nurse did not move. Her breathing slowed. The corridor lights hummed softly overhead. And somewhere out of sight. Metal clicked. The click was small. Clean. Mechanical. Final. The resident's reflection did not turn. His shoulders lifted a fraction, then locked in place, as if his body had decided before his mind had. The nurse watched the glass, not the corner. "Set it down," the unseen voice said. The resident obeyed. The coffee cup lowered slowly until it touched the floor. His fingers released it with careful precision, like a man placing something fragile beside a sleeping child. No one else in the main corridor noticed. At the nurse's station, a monitor alarm chimed twice and stopped. Papers shuffled. A chair rolled. Ordinary sounds, layered over the moment like fabric over a blade. The nurse shifted her stance half an inch. Weight balanced. Heels grounded. Hands relaxed at her sides. She spoke, not toward the corner, not loudly, not sharply. "Sir." The word traveled down the hall with surprising clarity. The resident's reflection flinched. Silence answered her. She continued, voice even. "You're in a surgical wing. There are oxygen lines in the walls. Discharging a firearm here would put everyone at risk." Still nothing. She did not repeat herself. 3 seconds passed. Then the man stepped into view. He moved the resident ahead of him with one hand on the back of the young doctor's collar. In his other hand was a pistol, held low but ready, angled toward the resident's ribs. He was not wild-eyed. Not shouting. His face was pale, jaw tight, eyes scanning with restless precision. A man holding himself together by force. The resident's breathing had become visible, shallow lifts beneath his scrubs. No one screamed. Shock rarely looks like panic at first. It looks like stillness. The janitor's abandoned mop leaned against the far wall. A clipboard slid slowly off a counter and tapped the floor. Somewhere, a patient's pump began a soft warning tone, unnoticed. The gunman's gaze moved across the corridor, cataloging. He saw the nurse's station. The doors. The exits. Then he saw her. She stood 10 paces away, hands empty, posture neutral. No badge of authority. No uniform difference. Just another night nurse who had not run. His eyes narrowed slightly. "Where's security?" he asked. His voice was controlled. Not loud. But tight with something coiled underneath. She answered immediately. On another floor. It was neither confirmation nor denial. Only calm. He studied her face, searching for fear. He didn't find it. The resident swallowed. "Please," he whispered, barely audible. The gunman's grip tightened at his collar. "Quiet." The word was not harsh. It was final. Down the hall, one of the surgeons stepped out of room 14, mid-sentence to someone behind him. He stopped. The sentence ended without finishing. His eyes fixed on the pistol. His body froze in the doorway. The gunman shifted his stance instantly, angling the resident between himself and the surgeon. The movement was efficient, practiced, not theatrical. Defensive positioning, not intimidation. The nurse noticed. Her gaze dropped briefly, not submissive, but observant. His shoes. Hospital floor dust on the soles. Not staff. Not patient. Recently arrived. Her eyes lifted again. "Sir," she said quietly, "he needs to breathe." The gunman didn't respond. The resident's chest fluttered against the grip at his collar. She took one slow step sideways. Not forward. Not back. Sideways, adjusting angle, not distance. The gunman's pistol shifted instantly toward her. She stopped. Her hands remained open at her sides. "I'm not coming closer," she said. Her tone didn't change. No tremor. No urgency. Just information. The gunman watched her carefully now. Not because she was loud. Because she wasn't. Behind him, far down the corridor, a door creaked open. Someone gasped softly. Footsteps retreated. He didn't look. His attention stayed on the nurse. "You in charge?" he asked. "No." The answer came without hesitation. He searched her face again. Something in his expression changed, not trust, not relief. Recognition. Not of who she was. Of what she was not. Not panicking. Not guessing. Not reacting. Thinking. His jaw flexed. "Good," he said. The word sounded like a decision. He pulled the resident half a step backward toward the intersection, keeping his body shielded behind him. The nurse watched the movement carefully. Not the gun. The feet. The spacing. The angles. The corridor had become a map. And he had just chosen his ground. Somewhere beyond the double doors at the far end of the wing, a distant shout echoed, faint, indistinct, carried through ventilation and stairwells. The gunman heard it. His eyes flicked once toward the sound. Then back to her. The pistol rose slightly. Not aimed yet. Preparing. The standoff had begun. No one moved. Not the surgeon in the doorway. Not the resident in the gunman's grip. Not the staff behind the desk who now understood, too late, what they were looking at. Movement, in moments like this, belonged to the person holding the weapon. The nurse kept her breathing even. The gunman's pistol hovered just below chest level, angled between her and the hostage. His finger rested along the trigger guard, not inside it. Careful. Intentional. He wasn't guessing how to hold it. She noted that. His stance was offset, weight slightly back, shoulders angled, not square. Defensive posture. Someone who expected resistance, not obedience. He had not raised his voice once. That mattered more than the gun. Name, he said. It was not a question. It was a requirement. She answered without pause. Elena. The name landed between them and stayed there. He watched her eyes while he spoke again. Everyone else stays where they are. Behind her, a chair leg scraped faintly. Someone froze mid-step. She didn't turn to look. They'll listen, she said. Her tone carried no command. Yet the corridor obeyed it. Stillness settled deeper, as if her voice had pressed it into place. The gunman's gaze flicked past her shoulder toward the nurse's station. A monitor beeped. A printer clicked. A pen rolled slowly off a counter and dropped. He listened to all of it. So did she. The resident shifted slightly in his grip, breath catching. The gunman tightened his hold, not violently, just enough to remind. Easy, Elena said softly. The word was directed at both of them. The gunman's eyes returned to her. You talk calm, he said. I work nights. A faint pause. Not humor. Assessment. He adjusted his footing half an inch. The resident moved with him. The pistol angle changed 2 degrees, closer to level. Elena noticed the change in line before anyone else noticed the movement. Her gaze drifted, not to his face, but to the wall behind him. Your left, she said quietly, oxygen panel. His eyes flicked sideways instinctively. It took less than a second. Enough. She saw what she needed. Grip strength right dominant. Wrist tension high. Shoulders tight. Breathing shallow. He was holding himself in control, not resting in it. He looked back at her sharply. You trying to distract me? No. She let the word sit. I'm telling you where not to point that. Silence again. The surgeon in the doorway swallowed audibly. The gunman didn't turn. But his pistol lowered half an inch. Not trust. Adjustment. Elena shifted her weight slightly onto her back foot. The movement was small, almost invisible. To anyone watching, it looked like a tired nurse settling her stance. To someone trained to see balance, it meant readiness. The gunman studied her more carefully now. You military? He asked. No. The answer came as easily as the first. True in wording. Incomplete in meaning. His eyes narrowed faintly. Behind him, far down the hall, a distant metallic bang echoed, one of the outer security doors being forced open by responders. The sound traveled through the building structure like a low pulse. The gunman heard it. So did she. His jaw tightened. Too late, he murmured, more to himself than to anyone else. His grip on the resident shifted higher, near the collarbone. Not choking. Controlling. The resident winced. Elena's voice remained level. He's lightheaded. No accusation. Just data. The gunman didn't respond. She continued, if he passes out, he drops. If he drops, you lose cover. A beat. Another. Then. The gunman adjusted his hold slightly lower. Not kindness. Practicality. She inclined her head once, almost imperceptibly. Acknowledgement. The corridor stayed frozen in its fragile equilibrium. Somewhere behind the double doors, radios crackled faintly. Muffled voices. Movement building outside the wing. Inside, time narrowed to breaths. The gunman spoke again. You're different from them. Elena didn't answer. Because he was right. And because agreeing would change the balance. His eyes searched hers once more, trying to solve something he could feel but not name. Authority, when quiet enough, becomes difficult to identify. His pistol steadied. Her hands remained open. Neither of them blinked. The first real line of the confrontation had been drawn. Not on the floor, but in the space between their stillness. The corridor had become a diagram. Angles. Distances. Surfaces. Light. Elena saw it the way a surveyor sees land, measured, segmented, defined by lines no one else noticed. The gunman stood just short of the intersection, the resident held in front of him, his body slightly offset to keep the hostage between himself and every doorway. He had chosen the position instinctively. From there, he could see both ends of the hall without exposing his back. It was not a lucky choice. It was a defensive one. Which meant he expected opposition. Which meant he would react quickly if he sensed it. Elena did not try to approach. Approach was pressure. Pressure made hands tighten. Instead, she looked past him. Room 12 needs a manual pressure check, she said, voice calm, directed toward the nurse's station. No one answered. A beat passed. Then one of the nurses understood. I'll do it. Take the cart, Elena said. Her tone was the same tone she might use during any shift. Routine. Mild, unremarkable. The nurse hesitated. The gunman's pistol shifted slightly at the movement. Elena didn't look at him. She spoke to the nurse. Slowly. The nurse nodded, though her eyes were wide. She reached for the supply cart parked along the wall, the one Elena had angled earlier. Its loose wheel rolled softly as she pulled it free. The cart moved into the hallway. Not fast. Not abrupt. Just a piece of hospital furniture being relocated. But its path mattered. As it rolled, it changed the corridor's shape, narrowing one line of sight, widening another, breaking a straight visual channel into two staggered ones. The gunman tracked it. His shoulders tightened. Elena, he said quietly. Her eyes returned to him. Yes. No tricks. None. The cart continued past, pushed by trembling hands. The nurse kept her eyes down, as instructed. When she reached room 12, she slipped inside and closed the door gently. The corridor geometry had shifted. Now, if the gunman turned his head to watch that doorway, his angle to the far exit weakened. If he focused on the exit, his peripheral view of the nurse's station narrowed. There was no perfect direction left. He sensed it. His breathing changed, still controlled, but shallower. Elena noticed. So she gave him something to stabilize against. You're holding too high, she said quietly. His eyes snapped to her. If he faints, she continued, your leverage disappears. He hesitated. The resident's throat moved against the pressure of his grip. The gunman adjusted his hold downward again, closer to the shoulder joint. More stable. More secure. More comfortable. His posture improved slightly. Stability restored. He didn't realize she had just reduced strain in his forearm muscles. Fatigue delayed. Control preserved. Time extended. She had not helped him. She had helped the clock. Down the hall, fluorescent lights flickered once, barely noticeable. One of the ceiling panels hummed louder, then settled. Elena tilted her head slightly, as if listening to the building breathe. Her eyes moved to a rolling instrument stand near the wall. Stainless steel. Reflective surface. Its curved tray caught a faint distorted image of the gunman's back. A second angle. She shifted half a step sideways. The reflection sharpened. Now she could see his elbow position without looking directly at him. The pistol remained steady. Finger still outside the trigger. Still disciplined. Still dangerous. Behind him, the surgeon in the doorway had begun sweating. A bead ran from his temple to his jaw. It hung there, trembling. Elena spoke again, tone unchanged. Doctor. The surgeon blinked. Yes? Step back inside the room. His eyes flicked toward the gunman. The gunman did not look at him. He looked at her. She met his gaze calmly. The surgeon took one careful step backward. Then another. He disappeared into the room and gently pulled the door almost closed. The corridor simplified. Fewer variables. Fewer unpredictable movements. The gunman exhaled slowly through his nose. He did not thank her. But his shoulders lowered half an inch. Trust was not forming. But calculation was adjusting. From far beyond the double doors, a new sound reached them, faint but distinct. A radio voice. Then another. Closer than before. The gunman heard it. His jaw tightened. The pistol rose slightly. Elena's voice came, soft and even. They won't rush you. He studied her face. You don't know that. I do. How? Not why. How? She answered without pause. Because they don't know you yet. Silence. The words settled into him. Outside, boots moved somewhere distant. Inside, the corridor held its breath. The geometry was set. Positions chosen. Lines drawn. And for the first time since he entered, the gunman stopped scanning the hall. And focused only on her. The shift in his attention changed the air. Before, the gunman had been watching everything. Doors. Corners. Movement. Now he was watching one thing. Elena. Focus can steady a person. It can also narrow them. The corridor lights hummed overhead. Somewhere down the hall, a monitor alarm began its slow, repetitive tone, 3 beeps, pause, 3 beeps. No one moved to silence it. The sound threaded through the tension like a metronome. The gunman spoke without looking away from her. They told me someone was here. His voice was quieter now. Who? She asked. He didn't answer immediately. His eyes searched her face again, as if testing whether she already knew. Behind him, the resident shifted slightly, knees beginning to weaken from standing rigid too long. His breathing had become shallow pulls of air that barely lifted his chest. Elena noticed. The gunman noticed her noticing. His grip tightened reflexively. The resident winced. Elbow, she said softly. He didn't respond. You're locking it, she added. That makes your hand shake. A beat. Another. His forearm muscles flexed. He adjusted his stance, redistributing weight. The pistol steadied again. He hated that she was right. Outside the wing, a distant voice called something sharp and official. It echoed through the stairwell, distorted by walls and distance. The words themselves were unclear. But the tone was not. The gunman's breathing changed again. Faster. Not panic. Urgency. They lied to me, he said. It came out flat. Elena didn't ask who. Didn't ask about what. Questions create edges. Edges create resistance. Instead she said, you came alone. Not accusation. Observation. His jaw flexed. Yes. The word carried weight. From the nurse's station, a chair creaked softly as someone shifted. The sound snapped through the hallway like a twig breaking in a forest. The gunman's pistol twitched toward it instantly. The resident flinched. Elena spoke at the same moment, voice calm but firm. Don't. The word landed before the gun could settle. The gunman's eyes snapped back to her. Not angry. Alert. She held his gaze steadily. No one's moving, she said. Her tone carried the same quiet certainty she might use to tell a patient their medication would work. He watched her for a long second. Then the pistol lowered again. Not fully. Enough. The chair at the station did not move again. Silence returned, but thinner now. More fragile. A drop of sweat slid down the gunman's temple. He didn't wipe it. His hands stayed exactly where they were. His control was costing him. Elena saw the tremor begin, not in the gun, not in his arm, but at the base of his thumb where muscle fatigue first shows. Small. Early. Important. The resident swayed slightly. The gunman reacted by pulling him closer, using him as support. The movement changed their balance. For the first time, his weight shifted too far onto his back foot. A temporary instability. Gone in a second. But she saw it. She saw everything. Down the hall, the double doors shuddered faintly. Not opening. Pressure from the other side. Someone testing them. The gunman heard that too. His eyes flicked toward the sound. Then back to her. "They're setting up," he said. "Yes." Her honesty made him pause. "You're calm for someone about to be in the middle of this." "I'm already in the middle." A faint crease formed between his brows. He studied her posture again. Her breathing. Her hands. The stillness in her shoulders. "You don't look scared." "I'm careful." The distinction settled into him. Fear is loud. Care is quiet. Behind him, the resident's legs trembled harder now. The strain of being held half upright was draining him. His knees bent slightly. The gunman felt it. His grip tightened again, instinctively trying to hold the man up. That was the first real mistake. Because now, his attention split. Part on Elena. Part on the failing body in his arms. Elena's voice lowered. "If he drops," she said gently, "you lose your shield." His jaw clenched. "I know." But his breathing told her he was starting to lose control of the equation. The hallway lights flickered once more. The overhead hum deepened, then steadied. Outside the doors, muffled movement increased, boots repositioning, fabric brushing gear, the faint static whisper of radios being keyed and released. Time was compressing. The gunman swallowed. "What are they waiting for?" he asked. "For you," Elena said. The words didn't threaten. They clarified. He stared at her. Not angry. Not shouting. Trying to understand something he could not place. "Who are you?" he asked quietly. She did not answer. Because the question itself was the answer. Silence stretched. The resident's knees buckled half an inch. The gunman tightened his arm to keep him upright. And for the first time since entering the corridor, his gun hand shook. Just once. Small. But real. Elena saw it. And she knew. The moment was coming. The tremor stopped. But not because the gunman recovered. Because he forced it to stop. His forearm tightened, tendons standing out beneath the skin. The pistol steadied again, though the effort of holding it there showed now in the rigid set of his wrist. Sweat had begun to gather along his hairline, tracing slow lines down toward his jaw. He was still in control. Just not comfortably. Elena watched without staring. Watching openly would feel like pressure. Pressure could tip him. So she let her gaze drift, to the floor, the walls, the ceiling panel above him, always returning to him as if by coincidence. The resident sagged another fraction. His breathing had turned shallow and irregular. His legs were no longer holding him fully upright. The gunman compensated by pulling him tighter against his chest. Which meant his shooting arm had less freedom of motion. Which meant his balance depended more heavily on his back foot. Which meant... Elena stopped the chain of thought before finishing it. Not yet. Timing mattered more than opportunity. From beyond the double doors, a voice called out again, closer this time, amplified through a hallway megaphone. The words were indistinct, but the cadence was unmistakable, trained negotiation tone. Slow. Measured. Deliberate. The gunman heard it. His jaw flexed once. "They think they can talk me down," he murmured. Elena said nothing. The overhead lights hummed. A drop of sweat slid from his chin and fell to the floor. The sound was almost inaudible. But in the silence, it registered. He shifted his stance again, trying to reset his footing without loosening his grip on the resident. The adjustment was small, but it forced his weight momentarily onto the ball of his back foot. Unstable. Gone a second later. Still enough. Elena's right hand twitched once at her side. Then went still. Not nerves. Decision. She had already measured the distances. 7 paces. 2 obstacles. 1 clear line. 1 partial. 1 reflection. The numbers were finished. Now there was only consequence. She spoke softly. "Your arm's tiring." The gunman's eyes snapped to her again. Not angry. Alert. Suspicious. "It's steady. For now." He stared at her, breathing shallow through his nose. Outside, a radio crackled sharply, then cut off. The sound made the resident flinch. His knees dipped again. This time lower. The gunman had to tighten his hold abruptly to keep him upright. That movement shifted the pistol offline for half a second. It came back fast. But Elena had seen enough. Her voice lowered further. "If he collapses, they move." The gunman swallowed. Not because he believed her. Because he knew she might be right. Silence pressed in again. The corridor lights buzzed faintly overhead. The 4 alarm down the hall continued its steady 3-beep cycle, patient and indifferent. Elena inhaled once. Slow. Measured. Then she did something no one watching understood. She lowered her gaze. Not submission. Preparation. Her hand moved toward the side pocket of her uniform. Unhurried. Visible. The gunman's pistol rose instantly. "Stop." His voice sharpened for the first time. She stopped. Her hand remained where it was, fingers resting lightly against the fabric. "Medication," she said calmly. "For him." She nodded slightly toward the resident. The gunman's eyes flicked to the resident's face. Pale. Sweating. Breathing unevenly. He hesitated. The pause was not trust. It was calculation colliding with exhaustion. Elena did not move her hand. Did not withdraw it. Did not advance it. She let him decide. Seconds stretched. Outside the doors, movement increased. Boots repositioning. A murmur of voices. Equipment shifting. Time was closing. The gunman's grip tightened again as the resident sagged once more. His focus split. Hostage. Sound. Elena. 3 directions. Too many. Slow, he said finally. Permission. Elena nodded once. Her fingers slipped into her pocket. Her movement was smooth, almost delicate, like someone retrieving a pen. Inside the pocket, her hand did not search. It went directly to the object waiting there. Cool metal. Familiar weight. She wrapped her fingers around it. Her pulse did not change. Her breathing did not change. Nothing about her changed. Except the decision had been made. She began to draw her hand out. Slowly. Carefully. The gunman watched every millimeter. The corridor held its breath. And for the first time that night, Elena was no longer waiting. Her hand emerged from the pocket slowly. Not empty. Not threatening. Just deliberate. The gunman's pistol rose higher, aligning with her center mass. His forearm trembled again, not from fear, but from the strain of holding tension too long. "Easy," he said. The word was tight. Elena's fingers continued upward. Between them, the air felt dense, like pressure before a storm. The resident sagged again in his grip. The gunman tightened his arm to hold him upright. That was when his balance shifted. Not visibly. But enough. Elena saw the weight transfer into his heel. Saw the minute correction in his shoulder. Saw the pistol's muzzle drift half a degree off its previous line. Her hand cleared the pocket. Metal rested against her palm. Small. Dark. Unmistakable. The gunman's eyes widened, not in panic, but in recognition. He knew what he was seeing. His finger moved. Not onto the trigger. But closer. Elena. He didn't finish. Because she moved. Not fast. Precise. Her wrist rotated inward as her elbow tightened against her ribs, minimizing motion. The pistol came up along the shortest possible path, no swing, no arc, no wasted movement. Her other hand met it halfway, stabilizing, locking, aligning. The action was so efficient it almost looked slow. But it wasn't slow. It was exact. The gunman reacted instantly, jerking his own weapon toward her. Too late. Elena stepped diagonally forward. Not backward. Not sideways. Forward, into his balance line. Her shoulder angled, her left hand snapping out not toward the gun, but toward his wrist joint. Two fingers struck a precise point along the tendons just above his grip. Not force. Placement. His hand spasmed. The shot he might have fired never formed. Her right wrist turned. The muzzle of her pistol pressed into the hollow beneath his jaw. Close. Certain. Unavoidable. "Don't," she said. The word was quiet. It did not echo. It did not need to. Everything stopped. The resident froze in his arms. The surgeon inside room 14 stopped breathing. The staff at the nurse's station stared, unmoving. The gunman's chest rose once. Fell. His eyes flicked, not to her gun, not to the corridor. To her face. What he saw there was not anger. Not adrenaline. Not fear. Just stillness. Professional stillness. His own pistol hung uselessly now, his fingers half-curled around it, nerves misfiring from the strike. He tried to tighten his grip. His hand didn't obey. Elena didn't shift her stance. Didn't blink. Her voice stayed level. "Let him go." The gunman swallowed. The resident's collar slipped slightly in his loosening grip. For a moment, it looked like he might resist. Not violently. But stubbornly. A man who had come this far and didn't know how to stop. Elena spoke again. Not louder. Softer. "You're done." Outside the double doors, boots pounded closer. Radios crackled. Someone shouted an order. The gunman heard it. His jaw flexed. His eyes searched hers again. Looking for doubt. Permission. Escape. He found none. Only certainty. His fingers opened. The resident slid forward, stumbling free, nearly collapsing to the floor before catching himself on the wall. He scrambled away, breath breaking into sharp gasps. The gunman did not move. Neither did Elena. Her pistol remained steady beneath his jaw, her stance rooted, her arms relaxed but unyielding. The muzzle never wavered. A single bead of sweat rolled down his temple and dropped onto the barrel of her weapon. He didn't wipe it. He didn't speak. He just stood there. Held not by force, but by inevitability. The double doors burst open. Boots thundered in. Armed officers flooded the corridor in controlled formation, weapons raised, commands sharp and overlapping. Drop it. Hands. Down. They stopped short. Because they saw. The man. The angle. The woman in scrubs holding him motionless with a pistol that did not shake. For half a second, no one moved. Then one of the officers stepped forward cautiously. Elena. The voice was low. Respectful. Not surprised. She did not look at him. Take him, she said. The officer nodded once. Two others moved in, swift and practiced. One secured the gunman's wrist. Another removed the pistol from his slack grip. Plastic restraints clicked into place. The gunman did not resist. His eyes stayed on Elena until the moment they turned him away. Only then did she lower her weapon. Not abruptly. Gradually. Control all the way down. She exhaled once. It was the first visible breath she had taken since drawing it. Behind the officers, the corridor remained silent. No cheers. No rush. Just the hum of lights. And the quiet, unmistakable realization spreading through every person watching. That the quiet nurse they had overlooked had ended it. The gunman was secured and escorted away. His pistol was tucked into an evidence bag. Officers murmured orders to one another, checking positions, surveying angles, confirming that the corridor was finally safe. Elena remained where she had been. Hands at her sides, uniform unruffled. The shift of her posture, the way she held herself, radiated control, but no one outside a trained eye could name it. A tactical officer stepped forward, moving with precision that spoke of long hours in training. He paused beside her, scanning her stance, the way her weight rested evenly on both feet, her shoulders relaxed but ready. He didn't speak at first. He didn't need to. Recognition didn't require words. The officer's eyes flicked to the pistol now holstered, then back to her face. The tilt of her head, the subtle alignment of her wrists, the economy of her movements, it all told him what he needed to know. She had done this before. Not just training exercises. Not simulations. Actual operations. He didn't say it aloud. Not in front of the staff, not in front of witnesses. He simply gave her a single, curt nod. Elena's eyes met his briefly, neutral, calm. She did not smile, did not offer thanks, did not acknowledge the nod beyond a slight inclination of her head. The officers returned their attention to the gunman. The corridor filled with a low hum of action again, radios keyed, commands whispered, medical staff checking patients. No one applauded. No one called her a hero. The resident she had protected adjusted his scrubs, blinked rapidly, and turned away. The surgeon from room 14 quietly returned to his station, muttering to himself, still shaken but functioning. Elena's presence remained understated. Nothing about her posture, nothing about her expression, invited recognition. Yet, in every subtle glance, every micro-assessment, the staff began to understand that she was not ordinary. Security personnel passed by her side, offering brief thanks or nods. She responded with small, almost imperceptible gestures, maintaining calm. No words. No explanation. Down the hall, monitors beeped normally. Lights hummed. The hospital exhaled as if nothing had happened, and yet the air still carried the tension of the standoff, now diffused but lingering. The tactical officer returned to the doorway, watching the scene settle. He glanced at her one last time. Another nod. Silent acknowledgement of capability. Not fame. Not recognition. Just understanding. Elena shifted slightly, then returned her attention to routine. Checking vitals, adjusting monitors, making notes on charts. Her calm competence continued to anchor the room, guiding the staff without overtly intervening. The resident approached, finally speaking. "Thank you." He trailed off, unsure what to say. Elena shook her head once, almost imperceptibly. "Focus on your patient." He nodded, eyes wide, swallowing. Words were unnecessary. The lesson had been learned. Staff resumed their duties. Life in the surgical wing continued. Machines beeped. The hum of fluorescent lights remained steady. Orders were given, patients cared for, charts completed. Elena's shift carried on as if the standoff had been a minor disruption. But the memory of the quiet, precise authority lingered in the minds of those who had witnessed it. No headlines. No accolades. Only subtle glances, quiet murmurs, and the unspoken realization that the nurse they had overlooked possessed skill, restraint, and authority beyond comprehension. She checked the next patient's vitals. Adjusted an oxygen mask. Confirmed medication. All routine. Yet beneath the calm surface, the truth was clear: she had controlled the standoff, preserved lives, and returned the hospital to order without ever needing the spotlight. Quiet authority, earned and contained, remained her signature. The hospital settled into a fragile rhythm. Monitors beeped. IVs hissed softly. Ventilators moved air with measured efficiency. Night shift was quieter now, but not entirely calm. No hospital ever is, but the acute tension had dissolved. Elena moved through the corridor with the same quiet, methodical steps she had taken before the crisis. Nothing about her stride suggested the enormity of what had just occurred. She adjusted a patient's blanket, noted a drop in oxygen, and marked a chart with the precision of someone whose hands knew order in chaos. The staff began whispering among themselves, exchanging subtle glances. Not loud admiration. Not relief shouted. Just recognition, barely perceptible but unmistakable. One nurse approached her quietly. "I didn't know anyone could stay that calm." Elena didn't look up. "It's not about calm," she said softly. "It's about seeing clearly." The nurse nodded, hesitant, and stepped away. She understood more than she could articulate. Down the hall, the resident she had protected adjusted his scrubs. His eyes flicked briefly toward Elena, then quickly down to the floor. Words failed him. Gratitude remained unspoken, but the weight of what had occurred pressed on him, heavy and quiet. Elena paused at the nurse's station. The tactical officers were gone. The gunman had been taken away, processed through protocol, removed from the building. Evidence collected. Procedures documented. Life moving forward, as it must. She glanced at the monitors. Every patient stable. The oxygen lines humming, the alarms quiet. The hospital was functioning. Safe. She exhaled. Not relief, exactly. More a quiet acknowledgement of a duty completed. No one called her name. No one asked for her story. No one demanded recognition. That was not part of her work. That had never been the point. She moved to the medication cart, double-checked doses, and made her way back to the central station. The fluorescent lights flickered faintly overhead, rhythm of life continuing in the hospital corridors. The resident approached one last time, voice barely above a whisper. "You handled that flawlessly." Elena's lips curved faintly, almost imperceptibly. Not a smile. Not pride. Just acknowledgement. "Focus on your patients," she said, and he understood. Beyond the glass doors, the first signs of dawn began brushing the sky with pale light. The hospital's silence softened. Staff rotated, changeovers approaching, and the chaos of day shift would soon reclaim the wards. Elena returned to her station, seated for a moment, reviewing charts as if nothing extraordinary had happened. Her hands moved with quiet competence, her posture calm, her expression neutral. No interviews. No praise. No accolades. Only the weight of responsibility borne silently, earned through action rather than announcement. A monitor beeped softly. A ventilator hissed. A patient murmured in sleep. Elena adjusted the lines on a chart, checking details nobody else had noticed. Each movement deliberate, efficient, and contained. Each gesture a quiet testament to her authority, restrained yet undeniable. She rose, wheeled her cart down the corridor to the next patient, and continued her rounds. The day would arrive, bringing a new rhythm, new patients, new emergencies, but the memory of the standoff would linger quietly in the minds of those who had witnessed it. Not a story shouted from the rooftops. Not a display. Not a legend. Just the unspoken understanding, the nurse they had overlooked was capable of far more than anyone could have imagined. And she didn't need anyone to see it. The hospital breathed. Machines hummed. Staff moved. Patients rested. Elena walked on. Calm. Steady. Silent. Authority unannounced. Restraint absolute. The quiet force that had ended a crisis, unheralded, remained present, always present, but invisible to anyone who didn't know how to look. Her shift would continue. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. But tonight, in the aftermath, the corridor held only the quiet weight of competence. The night had ended. She remained. And that was enough.